What if you could run faster, build endurance, and recover quicker without beating up your body? That's the secret behind the Norwegian Method, and today I'm breaking it all down. I'm Dr. Ray Peralta, physical therapist, run coach, and exercise physiologist. Over the past 10 years, I've helped hundreds of runners get faster, rehab injuries, and break PRs using data driven training systems. I'm going to show you how the Norwegian Method, the same training approach used by Olympians like Jakob Ingebrigtsen, can help you run faster for longer without trashing legs or burning out. We're going to cover what the Norwegian Method really is, some principles behind it, a weekly plan you can try even if you're not a pro, and how to modify if you're short on time or you're more of a beginner runner. So, the Norwegian Method is a high volume, low to moderate intensity approach to training that involves around threshold intervals guided by a lactate measurement. The crown jewel is double threshold days, two controlled workouts on the same day, carefully paced to stay just below your lactate threshold. Some people call it LT2, your lactate threshold 2, because LT1 is your aerobic threshold where lactate begins to accumulate, but LT2 is when the lactate really peaks up or spikes upward, and your body's not able to clear it as quickly. And then when you're training above that, you start to fatigue. You can't sustain the pace more than a few minutes, right? But when you train at sub threshold or sub LT2, this lets you accumulate a ton of high quality work without the crash and burn of your typical high intensity training. And if you want to learn more about like just running pain free, check out the free training I have linked in the description. So the Norwegian Method principles, right? One, it's based on lactate guided training using lactate, blood lactate testing. You could buy these kits, usually about $200. You can find them online, like on Amazon. You test your blood, you finger prick your finger or your earlobe, and you'll get your blood lactate, right? You want to know what your lactate is. You have to do a lactate threshold test, right? You could do a time trial, right? Run fast for 30 minutes, and then sample your blood lactate. See, hey, what was your lactate? Or work with an exercise physiologist and get it tested at a lab, right? You do a graded exercise test where they sample your blood on a graded ramp up test where they ramp up the speed every few minutes, sometimes done at 1 minute intervals or 3 minute intervals, and they sample your blood lactate every time the speed changes, and they'll see at what speed your blood lactate really spikes up. Usually this number is about 4 millimolars per liter for blood lactate volume, and then they'll say, okay, this is your lactate threshold, and then you just want to train slightly below that for your threshold, your sub-threshold workouts. And then you want to train right below that threshold or the red line. So stay under the point where your body can't clear lactate fast enough. That's how you go hard enough to grow without digging a hole in your recovery, right? Because if you train above your threshold, it's going to take you more time to recover. And you do too many of these workouts during the week, doing one of these above threshold work is okay, but doing too many of them can overly fatigue you and, can lead to overuse injuries and just impair your ability to do other types of workouts during the week, right? Because it takes you a lot longer to recover from. So that's one of the beauties of training at sub threshold. So what's the intensity distribution? So instead of your typical, some of the different distributions of intensity, right? So this polarized 80-20 approach, right? The 80% of training is like easy, 20% monitor hard. The Norwegian model is more pyramidal, right? And they typically done with a 3-zone model. So zone 1 is like 70%, zone 2 is like 30%, and then zone 3, a plus, which is considered their hard or above threshold, is less than 2% of the training. So most of their training is done easy, right, in the 70%, but then that double threshold is actually done at they call it zone 2, but it's actually right below that threshold, that lactate threshold. That's why they distinguish between zone 2 and 3, because above lactate threshold would then be considered hard. So in the 5-zone system, right, lactate threshold 1 or aerobic threshold is the top of like zone 2, and then lactate threshold 2, or what most people consider the lactate threshold, the anaerobic threshold, is zone 4. All right. So most of your threshold work sits in zone 3 to zone 4, not zone 5, right? So how do you do your double threshold days? So it's usually 2 sessions in a day for the double threshold. So short intervals at sub-threshold speed with a short rest. For example, you might do a morning session, let's say 5 by 5 minutes, repeats at sub-lactate threshold 2 pace. Then an evening session, maybe do 10 by 400 meter repeats at a similar intensity. But before you jump into this, you have to earn the right to do double threshold work, right? Don't jump into double threshold workouts if you're not already consistently running 60 to 80 miles a week. Build your base first, right? You want to build up your running base first, your volume, your just experience with running, right? And if you don't have a lactate meter, again, you could estimate your lactate threshold by doing a time trial, right? From the 30-minute time trial, so you warm up 10 to 20 minutes, run hard for 30 minutes, and then you average your last 20 minutes, you get your estimated lactate threshold heart rate, your lactate threshold pace. You can use pace and heart rate to guide your workouts, keeping it just below your sub-threshold work, right? So let's say you estimate that you hit a certain threshold, you make sure you document or you write it down or use your watch, right? Get your Garmin or your favorite tracking watch or device to track your heart rate and your pace, and then you say, okay, that was your pace at threshold, and just go slightly below it to be at sub-threshold. So some steps for beginners. Some people use something called the single Norwegian Method approach instead of doing doubles, right? So instead of doing a double threshold, they just do single threshold work, essentially just doing threshold workouts maybe twice a week. For example, to do 2 sub-threshold workouts, maybe 3 by 8 minutes, or repeat 800-meter workouts, but just only doing those workouts one threshold workout, right? So use RP, pace, or heart rate to stay just under your lactate threshold, or use a blood lactate meter if you want to actually sample your blood lactate and then say, hey, are you staying right below lactate threshold? So maybe your lactate threshold happened at 4 millimolars per liter, and then your sub-threshold might be at 3 millimolars per liter. So obviously you want to test it, right? So a lot of beginners jump into these things without even knowing their lactate threshold. So do a 30-minute time trial at the beginning of your training season or cycle, so you can know what your actual lactate threshold is, and then keep everything else outside of those threshold workouts easy, right? So typically zone 1 to zone 2, if we're using a 5-zone model, that is, right? So zone 1 and 2, so zone 1's recovery, zone 2 is like easy. And then add your second cardio. So if you really want to experiment with doubles, instead of doing another threshold workout, maybe you do cycling or walking just to build up your running base, or your aerobic base, because you don't necessarily have to do running to build up your aerobic fitness. You could do brisk walking, you could do cycling, you could do swimming, you could do running. So you could do one sub-threshold run in the morning, and in the evening do an evening brisk walk, right, for like 30 minutes or something. So sample week for if you're advanced. Right. So Monday, you might do an easy run workout, 45 to 60 minutes. On Tuesday, you might do a double threshold, right? Morning, let's say 5 by 6 minute at sub-lactate threshold, 2, right? The anaerobic threshold. And then evening, maybe again, 8 by 400 meters at slightly faster. Wednesday, you do an easy run. Thursday, another double threshold workout. Morning, let's say 8 by 3 minute repeats or intervals with some rest, again, at sub-lactate threshold. And then evening, maybe you do 6 by 8 minute workout, also sub-lactate threshold. Then Friday, easy run. And then Saturday, a long run, maybe with a fast finish. And then Sunday, maybe you rest or do some light cross training. And if you're a beginner, this might be Monday, easy run. Tuesday, just one sub-threshold workout. Wednesday, easy. Thursday, one other sub-threshold workout. Friday, easy. And Saturday, a long run, and Sunday, rest. So ready to try this for yourself? Or if you just want more information on running pain-free, check out the link in the description where you'll learn more about how to run pain-free, avoid injury, and build a smarter plan. And if this video really helped you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who's stuck at a plateau.